I'm very excited to have joining me today Winnipegger Courtney Pratt. She's going to share her testimony with us. But before she does, Courtney, for those who don't know you, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I am a mom. First, I'm married. So I have an amazing husband. His name is Dan. And we have two beautiful boys, Grayson and Chase. Grayson is 4 and Chase is 6. They attend Spring. So I'm a passionate mom, used to play competitive soccer, love to praise and worship our King. So I serve on the worship team at Springs Church. Absolutely love it. Huge part of our life and our family. And yeah.
That sounds amazing. Okay, competitive soccer?
Yes.
That's like blow your mind. Wow. Can you share just a little bit about what that was like?
Absolutely. I would say, I want to say that I actually kind of got the bug from my sister. My sister was actually an amazing soccer player growing up. She was part of the regional academy, went to nationals a couple times, and I think I've never actually told her this before, I don't think, but she was somebody that I really looked up to, although she was my younger sister. So I wanted to be like her in a sense in terms of playing soccer. So I kind of dove in high school, really, really loved playing recreational, kind of got to the point where I wanted to play a little bit more competitively. And into my adulthood, after having children, really wanted to start playing co-ed soccer because I liked the competition and I thought I could keep up with the boys. So moved into that and played competitive soccer pretty much all of my life. And even after having kids up until, 2 years ago.
Okay, so that is, I think, our beginning point. Tell us your testimony and what happened 2 years ago.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so February 2023, I was playing co-ed soccer at University of Winnipeg. I ended up running full tilt down the field, slipped on the ball, oddly enough. Never have done that in my life. Slipped on the ball, fell, landed on my back, got up, and right away I was like, oh, that sucks, and started, doing the wonky movements to try to, I don't know, put your back in or just feel like something was a little off. Within a week, I was having unbelievable spasming all the way down my left leg and in and around my hips. And it was like labor pressure that I couldn't relieve. So I knew that something was wrong. So I started going to chiropractic. I started going to massage therapy. I went to acupuncture, trying to rectify it in any way that I knew that I could. And I remember going to the chiropractor one day and he adjusted me. And I remember right when he pulled on my left leg to even out my pelvis, I remember I started bursting into tears, put my hands over my eyes, and he looked at me and said, "Are you laughing or are you crying?" And I just started just bawling. And so right away he sat up, gave me a Kleenex, and he said, "Courtney, I think you have a herniated disc in your back." So then I ended up going to the Pan Am Clinic. I waited a long time because I kind of thought I was going to slough it off a little bit. So and I actually kind of dreaded waiting outside because, sometimes for the walk-in clinic, you have to wait outside before they open the doors at 8 o'clock. So I was there at like 6 in the morning. I could barely walk. I could barely drive myself there because I was constantly leaning and keeling over top of my wheel. So I remember getting there, sitting outside, and I was almost like laying down on the cement. So I'm pretty sure everyone either thought I had an alcohol problem or a drug problem because I couldn't sit up properly. So finally I went in there, talked to a doctor there. He sent me for a CT scan. And the first thing that he did was he thought that I had a disc issue or disc compression or disc herniation of some sort. Obviously couldn't see it at the time until we had a CT scan. So he sent me for a CT scan. So I went to Misericordia Hospital. My mom actually took me there. They wheeled me in a wheelchair. And I think that's when reality set in for me that I could be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life because it was that bad. And from the outside, looking at me, you would never imagine that it would be, that bad. And I remember people looking at me as I was going in the hospital room kind of thinking, wow, you've got this senior citizen pushing a young woman. What happened to her? So I got the CT results and they said that I had a disc herniation in my L5 and my S1 and with possible root pressure through my S1 nerve root, which I knew right away was an issue because it was unrelenting pain. I just couldn't shake it. So then they started me on a bunch of different types of drugs, Lyrica, Baclofen, OxyContin, oddly enough. And this is coming from a woman who doesn't even have Tylenol in her home. I try to do everything from a natural health perspective as I possibly can. But it was to the point that nothing that I tried worked. So I knew that I needed to kind of move things to the next level.
And
so go ahead.
As this is happening, by the way, you have young kids.
Absolutely.
You have young kids. You walked in here today. I would love to hear how this got resolved. Please continue on.
Yeah, so young kids couldn't, like, I couldn't drive my kids to school. So my mom and my dad and my mother-in-law were constantly coming to pick up the kids every day. So I was told that the solution was opioids in order to manage the pain, or that I could go to see a spine specialist to get cortisone injections in my back. But there was a risk with that because you had to go in under x-ray. They would then inject a dye to make sure that that was the correct spot, pull it out, and then actually put the cortisone in. So for me, I went for the consultation for that section of it, but in my heart, I knew that that wasn't the area that I wanted to, the road that I wanted to go down. So then I ended up getting recommended. I went to go see Dr. Lukey at the Pan Am Clinic, who really closely monitored my case through everything. So I ended up having my first MRI in June 2023. It showed that I had 2 herniated discs at L4, L5, and that it was compressing my S1 nerve root. So I started doing myofascial treatments, acupuncture, massage therapy, laser decompression therapy, traction, physio, chiropractic, to the tune of about $8,000 out of pocket. And I found that although like the laser decompression therapy helped me kind of manage some of the pain meds and the opioids that I was on, it didn't necessarily resolve the problem because I couldn't, you know how you fast walk in the mall? I couldn't do that. So I couldn't even just speed walk. I couldn't bend over from my waist down. I couldn't lift things up. And I found if I stood for longer than 5 to 10 minutes, I would have to sit down. So going in to do sales calls and I couldn't stand up and I constantly had to grab a chair, I knew that there was a major issue. So then I ended up I got referred to the spine program in 2023 in July. And that was for a consultation with a neurosurgeon, not even in line for surgery at this point. And I knew that surgery was kind of where I felt I was being led to go. So then I ended up waiting and the pain kind of didn't go anywhere. So then I ended up going for a second MRI in July 2024, which showed that regardless of all of the alternative methods that I tried with the laser decompression therapy, that the disc bulges had actually gotten worse, if you could believe it. And at this point, I was living a completely sedentary life for the most part because my husband was taking all of the extra weight in terms of helping with the children, driving them to school, taking them to sports activities, because I found after work, I would come home and I would be laying down on my couch because either I was in so much pain. There was some points that my husband actually was picking me out of the basin of my shower because I couldn't stand. I couldn't sit on a toilet. I couldn't put my underwear on. I couldn't put my socks on. So it was very humbling from somebody who's been healthy, active, fit all of her life to then be faced with that and to be on a wait list for a consultation at what turned out to be an 18-month period of time. And I still to this day do not have a consultation appointment with our neurosurgeon department here. So then finally, I knew that I wasn't really getting anywhere and I wasn't getting the results or the answers that I had wanted. So finally I told my mom and dad, you're coming to my next appointment with Dr. Lukey and we're going to lay down the law and we're going to, tell him that I need some action here because this is not only impacting my short-term life. I've missed out on 2 years of time spending time with my children and taking them to the park and taking them for bike rides and the things that us as parents really, really look forward to and enjoy. So when he told me it was going to be at least another 18 months for a consultation, I don't want to say I lost it, but I just said, I need to start looking at other options. So oddly enough, I have our private wealth manager, Doug Workington. His brother, David Workington, owns Verve Surgical Center in Phoenix, Arizona. And one morning I woke up and I just felt led to message him, to just ask him to look at my MRI results and to give me some feedback as a second opinion because I felt I was at a crossroads and I didn't really know what to do. So he ended up taking a look I just texted him and said, do you mind taking a look at this? He took a look at it, called me within 2 minutes and said, Courtney, this is really bad. And if you don't get this dealt with, this could lead to paraspinal atrophy. You could be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. And I remember just crying and saying, I knew that I needed surgery 18 months ago. And I don't want to say I was denied, but I was on this never-ending wait list that was just felt like a tornado that was never ending for me. So I said, well, where do I go? Because at this point, I'm calling Toronto hospitals. I'm Googling best spine surgeons in the world, because your spine, it's not something you want to goof around about.
It holds all your nerve endings, all of the brain function, right? Like it's all connected.
And I didn't want to risk, possible paralyzation. I needed to make a choice, but I needed to make the right choice. So he said, no, I have one of the world's best surgeons that's a neurosurgeon that works out of my clinic. He can perform the surgery at our clinic. It's minimally invasive. It's called microtubal spinal laser decompression surgery that we can do. It's a very, very large word. But so I ended up saying, okay, well, what's the cost? Like, is it probably 6 months to get in? Like, how long is the recovery time? Because I was employed too at this time. So I didn't want to potentially risk losing that or being put on sick leave, because financially, no one can really afford that these days, to take that time off and for extenuated periods of time. So he said, no, we can get you in within 3 weeks and come down. This is what the cost is. And so I called my parents and I said, okay, I think we need to do this. And I feel like this is what I need to do. So he called me then on Thursday night and said, your surgery's next Thursday. And I said, what? Like, it's Thursday night already. How am I supposed to fly out? Who's going to watch the kids? And so I start, as a parent, you start to kind of like spiral a little bit. So my parents said that they were going to fly out with me. My husband ended up staying home with both of my kids, and we flew out on Monday morning. So Saturday night, we booked our flights, we booked our hotel, and Monday morning we flew out. We ended up getting amazing seats on the plane, ended up having unbelievable favor, but it was interesting because the morning of our flight, the surgical center called me and said, can you courier us your MRI images? And I said, well, I just have the MRI results. Actually, no one's even opened up the MRI for me to take a look at. So I've never even seen my MRI. She said, well, we're not going to go based on what the results are. We want to actually look at the images and diagnose it ourselves, and then kind of use it as a roadmap in surgery so that the doctor knows exactly what he needs to do and where he needs to go. So I said, well, I don't have that. So I called Selkirk Hospital, which was where I had my MRIs done. I said, I'm going for surgery. It described the situation. She said, no, we have 30 days legally to get that to you. And I remember starting to cry on the phone, and I said, I need this. I've been waiting 18 months. It's impacting every aspect of my life. Like, I need these. And I literally told her, I'm just praying for favor, and I'm praying that you can make this happen for me, because I need this. I'm going for surgery. I've already booked my flights. Like, this is important. So she ended up sending me on to somebody there, and my dad made an emergency trip. We got the MRIs images within less than an hour, and so we took them with us on the flight because we knew with a courier it could get stuck, something could happen. So we thought we'd better be safe than sorry. So I remember that morning, it was that morning we ended up getting our things, and it was really interesting because I just want to back up for 2 seconds. That Sunday, I was actually singing on stage. That was the last time that I sang on stage before surgery. And we sang Brennan Lake, House of Miracles. And I just was envisioning myself on stage, just being able to sing and be pain-free. And I had the worship team before we went on to sing, pray for me. And one of our praise and worship leaders, after we finished praying, said, I'm envisioning you jumping for joy, worshiping the Lord. And I have a very good feeling about this. Like, you're making the right choice. And so it was neat because we got on the flight, got to Phoenix, and the whole time I just kept listening to uplifting songs and remembering that everything was going to be okay. And so we ended up getting we got our couriered MRI images. And at this point, I should also preface that I hadn't even spoken with the neurosurgeon at this point. So I went in completely blind and completely abandoned, just knowing that God was going to make a way and that I was stepping out boldly in faith, knowing that he was going to deliver what he had promised me and what was my inheritance because of his sacrifice on the cross for us. So I ended up meeting the neurosurgeon that Tuesday, 2 days before surgery, and he met with me for 2 hours, one-on-one, uninterrupted. It was unbelievable because he pulled up the MRI images, walked me through every specific detail about what a healthy spine should look like, where the issues were, where it was compressing on the nerve root, which was causing my reflex issues in my left ankle. He did a body mass index scan, a full physical in terms of what my capabilities were, and then described the surgery in detail and exactly what he was going to do and how he was going to rectify it. And then he also talked about the post-surgery, we'll call it protocol, and rebuilding and strengthening yourself back, because surgery for spinal surgeons isn't just an end-all be-all. There's a lot of maintenance and a lot of things that need to be done after the fact to make sure that your body is set up for success long-term, because they do remove a significant portion of disc tissue from your back. So then we ended up doing that. Wednesday morning, I needed to have my blood work done because by the time our Tuesday appointment was done, the blood work office was closed, and they needed to have my blood work before surgery. So we ended up calling Dr. David Workington and said, we'll show up first thing in the morning on Wednesday. So he ended up calling the lab directly and saying, you're going to get this done. And he says, no, we've got 2 days to get it back. And he said, listen, her surgery's tomorrow. You're going to make this happen. And they sent out someone personally to pick up my blood work, to send it back, and we had the results in less than 4 hours. So then that was another miracle that God it just reminded me of when Moses parted the waves. Everything just moved. So it was really neat. And then Thursday morning, I had the best sleep the night before. I was totally calm and at peace. And it was a peace like I've never experienced in my life. So my mom and dad drove me to the surgeon's office, and I ended up in the parking lot. We always pray as a family, so my mom and dad just laid their hands on me, and my mom's, I wish I would have recorded it, but obviously you don't think about it in the moment. But she prayed the most unbelievable prayer that just addressed all of my worries, all of my fears, all of my concerns. And it just took away any feeling of uncertainty that I maybe had. And we sang the whole way there, Too Good to Not Believe. You're a wonder-working God, and you heal because you love. All the miracles I've seen, they're too good to not believe. And I just kept believing and envisioning myself as that miracle, knowing that it was mine. And then I had the surgery. Actually, I should say before I had the surgery, met with the general nurse. She came in and said, how are you doing, darling? And she was wearing a cross necklace. So me being the cheeky one that I am, I said, so is that a fashionable necklace or are you actually a Christian? I said it. And she goes, I'm a believer. I said, good, me too. So she said, how are you doing today? I said, I'm grateful to be here. And I think in saying that, I really blessed her as well, because I think most people come into surgeons' offices feeling super nervous, heavy, frightened, anxious. You always envision the worst things. And so it reminds me of a message that Pastor Zach spoke about, of like the beauty of the waiting. And so I knew, and it made that miracle so much greater because I was forced to be abandoned and to lay everything at the feet of God, and knowing that I was his child and that he had crafted me in my mother's womb and that I was perfect and that he was going to make me whole. So I ended up meeting with the anesthesiologist. I had a couple of fears going in regarding anesthesia and being nauseous after, because you can imagine having spine surgery and then coming off of anesthesia, the last thing you want is to be vomiting, because you could actually throw your back out and re-herniate the disc. So I had a couple of procedures done years prior where I had that experience where I was very, very nauseous and very sick. So the anesthesiologist ended up giving me some medication that really helped mitigate that for me. So I go into surgery, came out of surgery, and then literally like within an hour and a half after I came off of the anesthetic, the nurse, doctor, anesthesiologist all crowded around my bed and said, "How are you doing?" And I just remember that moment where I just burst into tears. And I said, "It's gone." And they said, "What's gone?" I said, "The pain. It's all gone. Like, and I can feel it," which was wild. I got up. They wheeled me to the door to leave. I got up out of the wheelchair and I walked to the car. And I remember like all of that pain was gone. Even though I was only a couple of hours out of surgery, I felt it. I knew. And it was, like I mentioned, like just a presence. The presence of the Lord was just all over me. And I felt a peace like he talks about in the Bible that passes all understanding. Like it was, all of it was gone.
Wow. That is amazing.
All of the anxiousness was gone.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. I want to share really quick that I used to run some half marathons and, be really active and all of these things. And I had a knee issue as well. But I remember when they told me for the next 3 weeks, don't do anything other than walking. And just that 3 weeks as a very active person, I remember being like, this is so difficult. So seriously, I cannot imagine being almost bedridden for 18 months when you play soccer all the time. You run around, you lift up your kids, and now you're in this state. So I have great compassion on you for that. And I also want to ask, if it's all right, how do you reconcile our health system?
So right now I have, I don't want to say lodged a complaint, but I've sent in a request for reimbursement to the College of Doctors and Surgeons and Physicians. I've also emailed Premier Wab Kinew as of December 20th, 2024. I have not received a reply from him or his office at all. The college, I have received a reply. They are reviewing my case and potentially getting somebody in contact with me for that. It is very eye-opening because while I am very compassionate to the nurses and the doctors here, I don't necessarily feel that they are getting the supports that they need to care for patients that are coming in with, we'll call it injuries like mine or other injuries. So I want to say we have to change the system. I believe mental health is a big one that we need to focus on, and whether that's creating some facilities that can specifically aid people dealing with mental health challenges outside of, we'll call it the general hospital, that can deal with, minor injuries, major injuries. I think we need to have more surgeons and more doctors available here that are skilled with the expertise to handle these cases and update. A lot of this is updating a lot of technology, because this surgery here, I would have been out for 2 to 3 months. And I was out. I went back to work on Monday. I was working remotely on Monday.
Wow.
So, and I was walking Target on Wednesday.
Wow. And an update on your health, like you can move. Have you played soccer again?
So I need to go back to when I saw the neurosurgeon 2 days, or I guess 2 or 3 days after surgery. He did the reflex test in my ankle, and all of my nerve endings were back in my ankle. Surgery went well. He actually ended up mentioning that the disc herniation that I had was one of the largest disc herniations he had ever seen in his 20-year career. So it was an emergency that needed to be done that wasn't handled in Canada, I should say. So recovery has been going well. I have not played soccer. I have to be very careful with, for the first month or two, I can't do anything that has any direct pounding or impacting. Bending and lifting, I wasn't able to do, but I can pick up my son, Grayson, and I did sing with him on Sunday in my arms at church. So I can do things like that. I think I'm more I have to find a sport that I love to do that won't necessarily have any complications. So soccer, I don't want to say I won't play that again. I just don't think right now. I think I might pursue swimming or golf some more, which my dad will really enjoy, because then it's something for my dad and I to do together.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I should say on the way home from Phoenix, when we booked our flights on the way home, I had a front row seat right in the middle, tons of leg room, and my parents were in the second row right behind me, kind of adjacent to where my seat was. And my mom was talking to the lady beside her and describing that I had just had spine surgery, and everyone was floored because I was up walking around, and that's not something that you would typically see following a major spinal surgery. And she told my mom, "How did you get your seats?" And my mom and I said, "Well, we just booked them on Saturday." She goes, "This flight has been sold out for months because it was university week for all the university students coming into Fargo. So how did you get flights?" And we said, "We just booked them." And same thing with hotels. Hotels has been sold out for months. And we just walked in and had them. So God just honestly, time and time again, just kept proving himself to me and showing himself to me. So
Well, you've sort of answered it already, but since we're a Christian radio station, I would love to ask, especially for people who might be struggling right now with any health things, how did you hold on to your faith while you were in 24/7 pain?
I'm not going to lie and say that it was easy, but I think that that is what faith is made of. Faith is the substance of things hoped for and things unseen. So what I really had to do was close my eyes, and as hard as it was, even though there were moments of pain, I had to envision myself well, rejoicing, jumping for joy, and claiming that victory. Because the enemy, the way he likes to attack people is through fear and worry and anxiousness and the fear of the what if. So I think for me, I really had to speak against him every moment that I had. Any moment that I started to feel doubts, you would see me pacing around my house. I am rejoicing in this victory. This victory is mine, And so it was really, by his stripes I am healed. I just started declaring scripture verses over myself. And that's really what I kept doing, and playing praise and worship music and just sobbing and laying it at his feet, knowing that it was coming. And I think if I would have had that miracle early on, I wouldn't have appreciated it as much as I do now. And it's neat because I have a scar that's about this big. And
it's not bad.
Not bad at all. But for me, I don't look at it as a scar as a bad thing. I look at it as a testament of his goodness to me. And it's a constant reminder of what he's done for me in my life. And I can play with my kids again. I have no pain. I can sleep through the night without being beside myself. So I think if you're struggling right now, my biggest piece of advice would just be to give it to God and let him work that miracle for you. And don't lose hope or faith in the middle of the struggle that you're in. It's only a season, and the sun always rises every morning.
That's really good. Courtney, you have been a blessing, and I pray that this blesses many people. Thank you for sharing today.
Thank you for having me.